Hello students, I hope you might have gone through the lectures that I have posted on my YouTube channel. We are adopting this type of communication in the current COVID-19 pandemic conditions. Whatever the lectures that have been delivered through the YouTube media, definitely you will be learning, you will be using these lectures. I would request you to go through these video lectures as many times as possible so that you can learn, you can re again. Sometimes, whenever you feel that some point of time you are missing something, definitely you can listen to that part of the syllabus or discussion that I have made. I would again appeal you to go through the respective study material that has been provided in the form of PDF notes, PDF format. Definitely, you can get them printed from the Xerox shop or you can directly read. But I would suggest you to get them printed so that it is useful for in any point of time and you can refer always. At the same time, physically, it is more feasible to read on a piece of paper rather than on digital media, since it is glareful and it will harm your eyes. So it is always better to use the printed material in your study. You need to work more and more in case of our grammar paper. So in paper number 6, we are going to study the language. We are going to study the grammar that is used in the linguistic analysis. We have discussed the linguistic analysis, the syntactic form of linguistic analysis. In linguistic analysis, we have, of course, the semantic structures of the language, and that is in detail studied the uh, in the grammar paper. I would again appeal you to get the book that is I have told in my last lecture, that is English Grammar for Today by say Greenbaum. Okay, so it is extremely useful when you refer or when you go on in your further studies. Of course, grammar, uses of grammar, the language that is used in our daily communication. Language, it stands for the the communication. Language is used for communication. So there is always the controversial debate that is always going on in the so-called anthropologist linguistics, how language originated. Okay, how language originated? Only human beings can speak. Do other animals not speak? Or even the birds are there, even the fishes in three world countries, in three worlds, I would say. The world that is on the surface of land, on the so-called the land or the countries, on the surface or the soil. The other world is the air world or airy world, means it's in up in the sky. We have birds, At the same time, the another world is aquatic world. So we have three worlds. So in every world, there is a life, human being with other animals that could not live in the aquatic world is living on the surface of the earth. We have fishes, fisheries, all types of fishes, crocodiles, and other animals, species in the aquatic world. And we have the airy world where the birds are. So every animal of these so-called worlds are said to be communicating in their respective language. How language or how human language originated? We have to study through the anthropologist point of view that language originated, how it originated, some of the physiological changes that we have seen. Human being was an animal in the prehistoric era. Then we have these so-called ages and ages. Okay, and throughout these ages, we have another development that occurred in the form of Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens are called as modern man because Homo sapien resembles in shape and size in its physiology to that of the current living man. So Homo sapien is called as the modern man. Homo sapien, whose physiology, who earlier before Homo sapiens, human being was crawling with four hands. Human being was uh, walking with four hands, with four legs, sorry. So Homo sapien who started walking on two hind legs that we are still using. So Homo sapien is called as the the modern man, not in just outer physique, but the inward physique, physiology of human being. He rises. He was walking straight. Okay, and with this, certain physiological changes that occurred in his, say, speech organs, and that made him to utter and produce some kind of sounds. Homo sapien was able to produce some of the sounds, and from that era we believe that the modern age has started. In respect to these whatever we have seen, again the debate, the controversial debate or the debating point is that what originated form, what type of language. So the spoken words, the uttered word sounds rather, okay, uttered sounds was the spoken form of language. In the very earlier era, man produced sounds. So we have such a big history in the spoken form and the written form. It is much more sophisticated invention of a human history that man is able to write, make some marks, and give some meaning to the written words. And that forms the written form of language. So the debate is what comes first, spoken or written form. But it is clear cut, the distinction that we can make is that man learned to speak first. Even a newborn child, baby child, produces sound at the birth. It starts crying. It means making sounds. Crying means making sounds. And it is its or the baby's first communication with the outer world. So he learns when he grows, when he goes to school and making some marks with his use of hands, then written forms. Okay, he learns the written form of language quite later on, and that is what it's clear cut that the spoken form is the first. At the same time, spoken form can be uttered by any person, whether literate or illiterate. Literate person or illiterate person can use the spoken form. But we have the sophisticated facility of writing the written form only with the learned or literate person. So writing requires, it demands something. It demands making marks. It demands the skill of writing. And that makes the spoken form as a priority one. Spoken form gains the first priority. Instead of this, okay, there are other things that we have seen. How language originated? Language originated in urgent need to communicate with others. So the birth of a language is meant for communication and for nothing other than else. Language is aimed and originated only for communication by the human being. And with respect to certain sounds, the language was used. There were cries, and uh, each and every respective cry, shout, did had some kind of a meaning, added meaning at those era that we see. When man was in the context of nature, there were certain meaning to the sounds. When there is a fire, certain sounds are produced. When there is an attack of wild animals on a human being, certain sounds were produced. Or even the other forms that were also used, smoke, fire, or shouts. These were all the so-called non-verbal symbolical means of communication that the man has used. Communication stands for the the use of verbal means sounds, producing sounds, and non-verbal means non-verbal type of communication. So both mediums were used by the human being in the history to communicate with others, and that is what we have seen. The the symbols that were used, the markings that were made, whether it's on the stone, whether it's in the caves, whether it's on the trees, whatever, had got some kind of a meaning in the context of, say, the history and the society. Literature brings us, or the study of language brings us all these types of, say, knowledges from the variety of sources. As a student, definitely, if we wish to pursue this research in depth, definitely we can go into the linguistic branch of study. Okay, so linguistic branch studies this type of, say, origin and on other aspects of uh, language. So language is there. Again, we do have certain regional variations. India is different from America or European countries. Even Arab nations are different from India and from the eastern, far eastern countries like Japan, China, Taiwan, Korea, Australia. Australia is distant apart. It's far away, cut away from other nations. But we have the respective growth of the countries in the form of a social evolution. Man evolved socially. And in social evolution of man, there were certain interactions that were taking place. Man's interaction with nature, man's interaction with other animals, and man's interaction with, say, the man themselves, men themselves. So there were so many people around him that made him to produce, to give some meaning. It's an urgent need in social context and cultural context. Man felt the urgent need to have some kind of a meaningful words, sounds, and with an added meaning, men were using this medium. And that is what we have certain evolutions of languages. In Indian context, we have our variation, our differences, and that is what we have produced our regional languages. If European countries are there, there are so many societies that come up and they have their own respective language. The French community produced French language. German produced German language. Spanish produced Spanish language. Likewise, there are Mandarin language, there is Chinese language, Japanese language. We have within India so many varieties of language. Marathi is there, Kannada is there, Tamil, Bengali is there, Bhojpuri is there, and rest of. So different socio-cultural background produced different varieties of language, and it has emerged as one of the branch of study. With respect to all these branches, with respect to all these studies, definitely we have different varieties. But in respect to this, all these things, how language is to be used, there are certain kinds of rules that needs to be there to use the language in the most impressive, influencing, and communicative way. If language fails to communicate, fails to mean something which aims at meaning, it's not a language. So language needs certain kinds of rules. So grammar is a set of rules. The definition that I have made in our last say video, that grammar is a set of rules by which we can make the language to use much more influential, much more impressive and communicative. It's a set of rules by which language is used in a most impressive way or correct way. Means by this, the language means something. If these set of rules are not followed, the language doesn't follow any kind of a rules. Means it falls apart, the meaning falls apart. The meaning is wayward. It will go on anyway. So we are its meaning cannot be understood. So it is the rules that makes the grammar. Again, in our so-called linguistic studies or the grammar studies, we have certain rules. There are two types of rules, okay? And these two types of rules are that we have to study, okay? Here we have descriptive rules of language and prescriptive rules of language. Descriptive rules describes the rules as per the language users. If the language is in use, descriptive rules describes how this meaning is possible with these rules. So we have different regional variations, and these regional variations can be grammatically studied, can be approached in a descriptive approach of a grammar. Prescriptive means the rules are there, and by rules the language or the structure or the sentences are formed. Subject, verb, object. If we have set a formula, it stands for the rule. This rule should be followed to make the sentence. Or there are, there are 8 ways the active sentences are produced, and there are 4 ways by which the passive sentences are formed. So the rules are defined first, and as per rules the language needs to be used, otherwise it will not make any sense. So it stands for the prescriptive rule. By these rules language is to be used. By this language should be used, no other way. So that is what we have, the sentences that are made. We have by and large, we can say prescriptive approaches of linguistic study or prescriptive grammar. Descriptive approach is also possible. Descriptive is not altogether wrong, not altogether right also. Descriptive rules makes us to describe by this way it is acceptable. Suppose the committee has or the government has decided on the financial policy, which is as per prescriptive rules is a correct sentence. The government has decided on new policy. In, say, if the American English speakers are using the same sentence, they will say, the Americans will say, the government have decided on the financial policy, which is grammatically incorrect. Prescriptive rules tells us if the singular subject is there, singular auxiliary verb needs to be used. So government has decided. But government have decided as per prescriptive rules is a wrong one. It's an American English. But as per American rules of English grammar, the government have decided is equally correct. From British English point of view, it is incorrect. But from American point of view, it is correct. Government have decided. It's correct. But in what way? So we need to describe that. Yes, government is formed not by one person, so it cannot be singular. Government is a conglomeration of many people. So government becomes the plural subject. Have is plural. So it is correct. So by these, we need to describe, and that forms the descriptive approach of English grammar. We have seen There are very much so-called differences in the English grammar all over the world. We have very varieties of English, just like we have British English, we have American English, we have Canadian English, we have New Zealand English, we have West Indies English, we have Indian English, we have Japanese English, we have Australian English. There are different varieties of English all over the world. These varieties of English and grammatical approaches, grammatical rules are descriptive approaches. The differences can be made accepted by the descriptive approaches of literature. So, the naturally, just I told you that naturally the point is very much valid how these differences, how these variations arise. So definitely the language do have, say, uh, see, languages do have uh, their uses. These users are from various socio-cultural background, regional background, and that makes the user, and it is user-based variation in English language. So we have regional variations. English is different. So Cockney English, New England English. See, the way I speak is different from any of the professor who speaks in England, who speaks in America, or any speaker, any professor who speaks in, say, Bengali. Suppose a Bengali speaker, he speaks Marathi English professor speaks, but their language is different one. So in the same way, we have Marathi, and we have varieties of Marathi language. We have tribal Marathi language. We have Pune's standard Marathi language. We have Vidarbha, Marathwada. At the same time, we have Khandeshi. So these regional Marathi languages are there. Their Marathi is a different one. In the same way, we have Cockney English, we have New England English, Australian English, Canadian English, Indian English, and American English. So we have varieties of English language. Indian English is different from the rest of the world, or British English. In what way? We have our own social cultural, our own utterances. We have habits, utterances habit, or pronunciation habits that makes it implicit to utter certain kind of words in a certain way or typically different way. We have to imbibe and engross and utilize the correct pronunciation that we learn from the British RP. So we have regional varieties of English language. Then we have social stratification. There are social standards. Okay, we have upper class, middle class, professionals, or we have these variations as per the educational background, as per social background, and as per educational and social background, we have the standards of, say, living. So those who are very well learned, educated, are using standard type of language, and those that are they don't have these amenities and facilities to learn and educate in their, say, in their growing age may find it difficult to utter and use and follow the manners of grammar and the utterances, so it becomes a difficult. Okay, the language used by the laborers and the language used by any of the, say, well-learned men, we have definitely varieties of English language. Then we have another, say, point, that is gender. Gender, we have feminine gender, masculine gender. Females are much more prone to prestige uses of pronunciation. She speaks very decently. Her utterances are very carefully. Her voice is nimble. And that makes female to use the prestige pronunciations. Males are, of course, stronger in their rough in their uses. Okay, they often use non-standard. Rough language makes non-standard language. Okay, they are more prone to use non-standard language. Males are, of course, even using language, they are stronger, they are very much direct, they are rather impolite or more or less polite in language use. So that makes this gender as user based. भाषेचा वापर करता हा कोण आहे, कसा आहे, याच्यावरून ठरतं काम इंग्लिशमध्ये किंवा भाषेमध्ये फरक कुठे पडतो. भाषा बोलणाऱ्या व्यक्तीच्या अशा सर्व गोष्टींमुळे, बॅकग्राऊंडमुळे भाषेचा वापर हा आपल्याला लक्षात येतो. त्यामध्ये अजून भाषेचा वापर कसा आहे, कोणत्या दृष्टिकोनातून, यूज काय, लँग्वेज यूज, त्यानुसार पण आपल्याला भाषेमध्ये व्हेरिएशन्स पाहायला मिळतात. वी हॅव टिनोर. Tenor, it stands for the tone of language. Okay, how it sounds. Tenor, it stands for the some kind of a rhythm. How it feels, how it appears to the listener. We have formal type of language. Formal type of language means official language. Formal type of language is with respect. It follows the rules. It follows the respect that is required to be given to the person in charge. So we have formal language. Then we have informal language. Informal language is used mostly in informal conditions. Formal means where office is there, official language, official dialogue is there. Informal language stands for the informal relations, just like two friends, mother son, father daughter, or mother and father, two siblings are communicating, and neutral, of course. Okay, so our language suddenly changes. If a student speaks with a professor, uses a formal type of language. But the same student goes among the friends, his own friends, he turns informal in his communication. So, as per the use, language use, we have the variety of language. Then, mode of use. How language is used. There are various modes of languages, just like spoken, non-verbal, written, face-to-face. These are the modes of language. Spoken means language is spoken. It's more direct. It's more, say, racy. The care is taken that his words are directly reaching. Okay, there is no kind of a formality that is followed. Non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication stands for the use of hands. use of say other mediums just like pictures, charts, okay, gestures, facial expressions, and we use these for communication purposes. Then written communication, we write letters, we write notes, okay, we write anything, a draft, a piece of paper or paper. It's a written form of communication. The language used in a written form and the language used in spoken form are different one. We need to be formal while writing. We need to be grammatically correct in writing. We need to use a certain type of words, certain linking words, certain respective words, certain formal language rules need to be followed. Grammatical rules need to be followed in writing. While in spoken, if you make mistake, don't worry. Your meaning is get communicated. That is what is required. The spoken form is direct. It's spoken. You can even just speak words. There is no need of grammar. Don't worry about grammar in speaking. Just your message should get across. That is what is required. But in written form, you need all those knowledge of formalities, formal rules. At the same time, you need the the punctuation marks. At the same time, you need other say ethics that need to be followed while writing. Then we have face-to-face communication. It's a very beautiful mode of communication. Face-to-face communication uses two things: spoken form and non-verbal form. All our classroom teaching, when a professor walks into a classroom and delivers his own topic on a particular subject, is speaking. At the same time, he is making some kind of a say marks on the blackboard. He's writing. So a professor is writing on the blackboard, making some draw, making some charts, okay, is to improve the communication. At the same time, when he turns towards you, to audience you, to deliver with you, he uses his facial expressions, he uses his hands, he uses his body language, okay. So non-verbal communication and spoken form, both of them are used in face-to-face communication, and that is what face-to-face communication is more communicative in our language communication. And those who are very adept, skillful in using these two forms can become a great orator or may become a great actor. Okay. See. Then in which section, in which region, in which domain the language is used? Language is used in advertisement. Language is used in some another domain. The language of schools, colleges is different. The language of advertisement is different. The language of court, the language that is used in newspaper, journalism, the languages used in different domains are typically different from each other. And that makes this domain, domain variations. Okay, we have the linguistic variety as per the domain and the use of language. There are some kind of a differences in the form of vocabulary, in the form of words, use of words. The judicial system uses a certain judicial or judiciary related words. Advertisement uses the advertisement related type of words. The literary, say, domain uses the literary type of words. It goes on describing, beautifying, giving the ornamental, say, qualities to the language. Language is used just to express the metaphorical meaning through which the emotions and imaginations and all other things are communicated. We have technical terms. There are various technical terms that we see. And that is what we have, the science that is different from science, technology, engineering, and all other fields, medicine. All these domains are using their own domain languages, and that we think are essentially there. That makes this this type of communication, it's it's typically different from the other domain, or a particular domain uses its own that we call as a register. So language variation as per the users. So in today's video, we have studied what are the language variations. Of course, these variations will improve your knowledge. This particular first chapter of our grammar is not for the study, but it is not going to be asked in question paper, but as a part of syllabus, as a begin, as you are going to begin to study and go into the more deeper understanding of our subject. Definitely this topic is very much relevant, and that is what it is put at the very beginning of our book, that is English Grammar for Today. It's very good book. I appeal to you to get your personal copy from the market. Definitely it will be useful for all your rest of the life. Okay. And at the same time, I have in our earlier after our earlier video lecture and today's say today itself, I have shared a Google form to mark your attendance, and I request you to give your attendance as per the topic that is been covered in the video lecture. So with these words, definitely I hope you are studying well, you are understanding well. Of course, making such a videos is definitely a difficult job. We had to work throughout the day. We had to prepare at the same time. We had to prepare PowerPoint also, and at the same time, of course, other related work, other classes that are relevant also. So we had to prepare for them also. Whatever your say, this education should not stop, and I hope this pandemic condition go uh, will go out, and we will again resume our classes. Okay. uh, with these, do comment, and at the same time fill up the Google form that I am sharing with you. So with these words, I end today's lecture. Thank you.